Commander Jake Morrison looked out the window of his shuttle and saw the massive alien palace floating in space. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The structure was made of something that looked like crystal and metal mixed together. It glowed with a soft purple light that made Jake feel small. "Remember, Commander," Ambassador Kyle Bennett said from the seat behind him. "The Thessians take their protocols very seriously. Don't touch anything. Don't speak unless spoken to. And for the love of Earth, don't improvise." Jake smiled but didn't turn around. "When have I ever improvised?" His second-in-command, Lieutenant Amy Chun, laughed quietly. "Should I make a list, sir? It might take a while." The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. He checked his reflection in the metal wall. His hair was a bit messy, but he figured that was just his style. At 38 years old, he had been through enough diplomatic missions to know that being yourself usually worked better than trying to be someone else. The doors opened, and cold air rushed into the shuttle. Jake stepped out onto a platform that seemed to be made of solid light. It held his weight, but he could see through it to the stars below. It made his stomach flip. A group of Thessian guards stood waiting. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their eyes were large and completely black. They wore armor that looked both ancient and advanced, with glowing symbols that Jake couldn't read. "Welcome to the royal palace of the Thessian Empire," one guard said. His voice was deep and formal. "You will follow us to the greeting chamber." Jake nodded and followed. Amy walked beside him, her eyes taking in everything. Ambassador Bennett stayed close behind, probably ready to apologize for anything Jake might do. The palace interior was even more impressive than the outside. The walls seemed to shift colors as they walked. Music played from somewhere, but Jake couldn't see any speakers. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with whale songs. They entered a massive hall. At the far end, on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself, sat Queen VL Arian. Jake had seen pictures, but they didn't do her justice. She was tall and elegant, with the same shimmering skin as her guards, but with patterns that moved across her face like living tattoos. She wore a crown that floated above her head without touching it. Her robes flowed around her as if she was underwater, but it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention. They were black like the others, but somehow he could feel her looking right through him. She had a presence that made everyone in the room stand a little straighter. "Humans," she said. Her voice was musical but cold. "You are welcome to our empire. We hope this meeting will bring prosperity to both our peoples." Ambassador Bennett stepped forward and began the formal greeting he had memorized. It was long and full of flowery language. Jake tried to pay attention, but his eyes wandered around the room. That's when he saw it. A small door on the side of the hall. It was barely noticeable, but there was something about it that made Jake curious. The door was different from everything else. It looked old, made of real wood, not the light and metal everything else was made from. Jake's hand moved to his pocket out of habit. He felt movement. His heart sank. No, not here. Not now. His pocket wiggled again. Jake slowly reached in and felt fur. Warm, angry fur. Charlie had somehow gotten out of the ship. Charlie was Jake's pet ferret. He had smuggled the little guy aboard against regulations because, well, space was lonely and Charlie was good company. The ferret had been sleeping in Jake's quarters. At least, Jake thought he had been. Now Charlie was very much awake and very much wanting out of the pocket. Jake tried to hold the ferret still, but Charlie was determined. The animal squeezed out and dropped to the floor. For a moment, Jake hoped no one would notice. Maybe Charlie would just stay put. Charlie did not stay put. The ferret shot across the polished floor like a furry torpedo. He ran straight toward the throne, toward Queen Valerian. Jake's training kicked in. He ran after Charlie without thinking. He heard Amy call his name. He heard Ambassador Bennett make a sound like someone had punched him in the stomach. But Jake was focused on catching the ferret before he reached the Queen. The Thessian guards moved to intercept Jake, but he was faster. He dodged between them, jumped over a decorative fountain that he only saw at the last second, and slid across the floor on his knees. Charlie darted left. Jake followed. The ferret went under a curtain, and Jake went after him. He caught Charlie just as he was about to climb the throne. Jake grabbed the ferret and held him close. He was breathing hard. His uniform was now dirty from the slide. He looked up. He was on the wrong side of the curtain. He was in a space that he suddenly realized was very, very sacred. The air felt different here. The light was dimmer. There were symbols on the floor that glowed when he looked at them. Worse, he had just run through what appeared to be some kind of ceremony. Several Veshan priests stood frozen, their hands raised in what had been a ritual gesture. They stared at Jake with expressions that clearly said he had done something terrible. "Oh," Jake said. "This is bad." "Guards!" Queen Valerian's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Bring the human to me, now." 2 guards grabbed Jake's arms. They weren't gentle. They dragged him back through the curtain and forced him to kneel in front of the throne. Charlie squeaked and tried to escape again, but Jake held him tight. Queen Valerian stood up. She was even taller than Jake had thought. She looked down at him, and her face was like carved stone. No emotion. No mercy. "Do you know what you have done?" she asked. "I interrupted something important," Jake offered. Charlie chose that moment to poke his head out and make a friendly chirping sound. Several guards gasped. One of the priests actually fainted. "That is a beast," the queen said, pointing at Charlie. "You brought a beast into our sacred space. You walked through the path of ancestors during the ceremony of remembrance. You have committed 3 separate violations of our most holy protocols." "Look, I'm really sorry," Jake said. "Charlie here, he's not dangerous. He's actually very friendly. And I didn't know about the path thing. Maybe you guys could put up a sign?" Amy closed her eyes. Ambassador Bennett looked like he wanted to disappear. Queen Valerian's expression didn't change, but Jake thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise? Anger? He couldn't tell. "You will come with me," she said. "Guards, take him to my private chambers. I will deal with this personally." "Your Majesty," Ambassador Bennett said quickly. "Perhaps if we could discuss—" "No," the Queen said. "This human has broken our laws. He will face judgment alone." Jake was pulled to his feet. As the guards led him away, he looked back at Amy. She gave him a look that said, "Try not to make it worse." That was probably good advice. But Jake had never been great at following good advice. The guards took him through several corridors. They passed other Veshans who stared at Jake and his ferret with wide eyes. News of what happened was probably spreading fast. Finally, they reached a large door. It opened by itself, and the guards pushed Jake inside. The door closed behind him. The room was huge. One wall was entirely made of transparent material, showing the stars outside. The other walls were covered in shelves, and those shelves were full of things that made Jake's eyes widen. Books, earth books. He could see the spines. Classics he recognized: Hemingway, Austen, Vonnegut. There was also music. Actual vinyl records in frames on the wall. The Beatles. Miles Davis, Johnny Cash. "You're surprised," Queen Valerian's voice came from behind him. Jake turned. The Queen stood near a desk. She had removed her crown, which now sat on the desk, still floating. Without it, she looked less intimidating, but somehow more real. "I didn't expect you to have Earth stuff," Jake admitted. "I find your culture fascinating," she said. She walked closer, and Jake noticed she moved with incredible grace. "Your music has passion. Your literature explores emotions that my people have forgotten. We have become so focused on protocol and tradition that we have lost spontaneity. So you're not going to execute me?" "Execution is not our way," she said. "But you must be punished. What you did was unacceptable. You disrespected our traditions. You showed no care for our customs. You brought chaos into our ordered world." She was now standing right in front of him. Jake was 6 feet tall, but he had to look up to meet her eyes. "However," she continued, and her voice was softer now, "I believe your ignorance was genuine. You did not intend to insult us. You were simply being human. Is that good or bad?" "I have not decided yet." She looked down at Charlie, who was still in Jake's arms. What is this creature? This is Charlie. He's a ferret. From Earth. May I? She held out her hand. Jake hesitated, then gently passed Charlie to the Queen. She held the ferret carefully, studying him. Charlie, being Charlie, immediately decided the Queen was his new best friend. He climbed up her arm and sat on her shoulder, chirping happily. For the first time, Queen Valerian smiled. It was small, but it was real. It transformed her face completely. He is soft, she said. And warm. He likes you, Jake said. Charlie's a good judge of character. The Queen's smile faded. She carefully removed Charlie from her shoulder and handed him back to Jake. Her formal mask was back in place. You will remain here as my guest, she said. You will serve as my cultural liaison for the duration of the... Jake woke up early the next morning to find a guard waiting outside his quarters. The Theshan didn't speak, just gestured for Jake to follow. Charlie was left behind with Amy, who promised to keep him out of trouble. Jake wished someone would do the same for him. The guard led him through the palace to a different section than before. This area was clearly where the Queen actually lived, not just where she held court. The decorations were less formal. Jake saw what looked like personal items on tables. A piece of art that seemed half-finished. A musical instrument he didn't recognize. They stopped at a door. The guard knocked once, then left without a word. Enter, the Queen's voice called. Jake stepped inside. The room was smaller than he expected, more comfortable. Queen Valerian sat at a table, eating breakfast. She was still wearing formal robes, but they were simpler than yesterday. Her crown floated above her head again. Sit, she said, pointing to a chair across from her. You will eat with me each morning during your stay. It is part of your education. Jake sat down. The table had food he didn't recognize. Some of it glowed softly. Some of it moved slightly, which made him nervous. Don't worry, the Queen said, noticing his expression. Nothing here will harm you. This is tavel fruit. This is grain from our southern continent. This is safe for human consumption. Jake tried a piece of the fruit. It tasted like strawberries mixed with something spicy. It was actually good. Today you will shadow me, the Queen said. You will observe how I fulfill my duties. You will see why protocol matters, why every action has meaning. Why chaos, while sometimes amusing, cannot be allowed to rule. You thought Charlie was amusing? The creature? No, your face when you realized where you were? That was amusing. Jake wasn't sure if she was joking. Her expression gave nothing away. They spent the morning in what the Queen called the Hall of Petitions. Citizens came to ask for help with problems. A farmer needed permission to expand his land. A scientist wanted funding for research. A young couple requested approval to marry across clan lines. Jake watched the Queen handle each case with careful attention. She listened to everyone. She asked questions. She made decisions that seemed fair and thoughtful. But everything was so formal. Every word was chosen carefully. Every gesture had meaning. After 3 hours, they took a break. The Queen led him to a balcony that overlooked a massive garden inside the station. Real plants grew there under artificial sunlight. The air smelled like flowers and earth. You're bored? The Queen said. No, I'm not. You are. I can see it. You humans wear your feelings on your faces. It is one of your more interesting qualities. Jake leaned on the railing. I just don't understand why everything has to be so complicated. That couple who wanted to marry? They love each other. Why do they need permission? Because their clans have history. Old conflicts. If they marry without proper approval, it could cause tension. Could lead to problems that affect many people. Or people could just let them be happy and deal with problems if they actually happen. The Queen was quiet for a moment. That is a very human perspective. Is that bad? I don't know yet, she said. She looked out at the garden. My people have followed these protocols for thousands of years. They have kept us stable, safe, ordered. But are you happy? Jake asked before he could stop himself. The Queen turned to look at him. Her black eyes seemed to see right through him again. Happiness is not a requirement for leadership. Duty is what matters. That sounds lonely. It is, she said quietly. Then she straightened. Come, we have more work to do. The afternoon was spent in meetings with advisors. They discussed trade routes, resource allocation, and diplomatic relationships with other alien species. Jake tried to pay attention, but his mind wandered. He kept thinking about what the Queen had said about duty and happiness. That evening there was a formal banquet. Jake had to wear special clothes that the Thessians provided. They were uncomfortable and made him feel like he was wearing a tent. But Amy had sent him a message saying this was important, so he did his best. The banquet hall was full of important people. Not just Thessians, but representatives from other alien species. Jake recognized a few from previous missions. He tried to remember all the protocol rules he'd been taught. Don't sit before the Queen sits. Don't eat before she eats. Don't speak unless you're addressed. Don't use the wrong fork. There were apparently 8 different forks for different courses. Jake was seated near the Queen's table, probably so she could keep an eye on him. Ambassador Bennett was there too, along with Amy and several other humans. The food was elaborate and strange. Jake did his best. He only used the wrong fork twice, and Amy quietly corrected him both times. Then things got interesting. A delegate from another species, the Vorkans, stood up to give a toast. He was tall and green with too many arms. His name was something Jake couldn't pronounce. To our hosts, the Vorkan said, his voice loud and oily, the mighty Thessians who have ruled with wisdom for so long, though some say your empire grows old, tired, unable to adapt to new ways. But we believe you still have value, like an ancient tree that provides shade even as it dies. The room went silent. Jake didn't need to be an expert in alien politics to know that was an insult. A serious one? He looked at Queen Valerian. Her face showed nothing, but her hands gripped her glass a little tighter. We thank you for your words, she said, her voice perfectly controlled. Though comparing us to a dying tree is perhaps not the compliment you intended. The Vorkan smiled, showing too many teeth. Oh, but I meant it with great respect. After all, even dying things can be beautiful. And your traditions, while outdated, are certainly beautiful. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. He'd only known the Queen for a day, but he'd seen how hard she worked, how much she cared about her people. This guy was being a jerk just to be a jerk. Before he could think about it, Jake stood up. That's funny, Jake said loudly. The room turned to look at him. He saw Ambassador Bennett's face go pale. Because where I come from, we have a saying. Those who can't grow themselves try to cut down everyone else to their level. The Vorkan's smile disappeared. Excuse me, you heard me, Jake continued. He was probably ruining everything, but he didn't care. You come here as a guest and insult the Queen? That's not strength. That's just rude. The Thessians have built an empire that's lasted thousands of years. What have your people done? Besides show up uninvited and talk trash? How dare you? No, how dare you? Jake said. Queen Valerian has shown nothing but grace today. She listened to her people's problems for hours. She made fair decisions. She welcomed all of us into her home. And you thank her by comparing her empire to a dying tree? Where I come from, that's called being a coward. The Vorkan's face turned darker green. He looked like he wanted to attack Jake. Guards moved closer, ready to intervene. Then something unexpected happened. Queen Valerian laughed. It wasn't loud. Just a small sound. But in the silence of the hall, everyone heard it. They turned to look at her, shocked. Commander Morrison is correct, she said, standing. Delegate Vorkan, you have overstepped. You may consider our hospitality withdrawn. You will leave in the morning, the Vorkan sputtered. This is outrageous. I am a representative of, species that apparently values insults over diplomacy, the Queen finished. Guards, escort him to his quarters, now. The guards moved quickly. The Vorkan was taken away, still protesting. The other guests sat in stunned silence. Queen Valerian looked at Jake. He couldn't read her expression. Then she raised her glass. To Commander Morrison, she said, who reminds us that sometimes the old ways of hospitality require defending the new ways of speaking truth. The room slowly came back to life. People drank to the toast. Conversation started again. But Jake noticed something. The Queen's advisors were looking at him differently. Some with approval, Some with concern. After the banquet, Jake was walking back to his quarters when a guard stopped him. "The Queen wishes to see you. Follow me." Jake's stomach dropped. He'd probably gone too far. He was going to be sent home in disgrace. The guard led him to the Queen's private chambers again. She was waiting by the window, still in her formal robes. But her crown was off. She looked tired. "Before you apologize," she said without turning around, "don't. What you did was foolish. It broke every rule of diplomatic conduct. Ambassador Bennett will probably have words with you." "So I'm in trouble?" She turned to face him. "No, you are not. Because what you did was also brave and honest. And it was the first time in many years that someone has defended me without being asked." "That guy was a jerk." "Yes, he was," she agreed. A small smile appeared on her face. "And your face when you stood up. You looked like you wanted to fight him physically." "I did, kind of." The smile grew a little. "Your people are so direct, so emotional. It is refreshing and terrifying." She walked closer to him. "I have been thinking about what you said. About happiness, about why that couple needs permission to marry." "I'm sorry if I overstepped. Stop apologizing," she said. "In my culture we are matched. Our partnerships are arranged for political benefit. I have never chosen anything for myself. My parents chose my education. My advisors choose my schedule. My council chooses who I meet. I rule an empire, but I do not rule my own life." Jake didn't know what to say to that. The next 3 days were strange for Jake. He continued to shadow Queen Valerian, learning about Theshan culture and watching her handle the daily business of ruling an empire. But something had changed between them. They were more comfortable with each other. They talked more during meals. She asked him about Earth. He asked her about her childhood. She told him about growing up in the palace, always being prepared to rule, never having time to just be a child. He told her about growing up in Texas, playing baseball, and getting into trouble for putting frogs in his teacher's desk. "You were rebellious even as a child," she said with amusement. "My mom said I was spirited," Jake replied, which was her nice way of saying I was a pain. The Queen smiled. She was smiling more often now. Jake noticed that her advisors noticed too. Some looked pleased. Others looked worried. The trade negotiations, however, were not going well. Ambassador Bennett and the Theshan Trade Council were stuck on several key points. The humans wanted access to certain technologies. The Theshans wanted guarantees about cultural preservation. Neither side would budge. On the 4th day, Jake sat in on one of the negotiation sessions. It was painfully slow. Both sides used formal language and carefully worded statements. Nothing was direct. Everything took forever. After 2 hours of watching people talk in circles, Jake couldn't take it anymore. "Can I say something?" he asked. Ambassador Bennett gave him a warning look. "Commander Morrison, this is not—" "Let him speak," Queen Valerian said from her seat. "I am curious what the commander thinks." Jake stood up. "Look, everyone here wants the same thing. We want an alliance that benefits both our peoples. But we're so busy being careful and following protocol that we're not actually talking to each other." One of the Theshan counselors frowned. "We are talking. That is what negotiation is. No, you're dancing around what you really want to say. The humans are worried you'll use the technology we give you for military purposes. You're worried we'll come in and destroy your culture like some kind of invasion. But nobody's saying that out loud." The room went very quiet. Ambassador Bennett looked like he wanted to disappear. "So here's my crazy idea," Jake continued. "What if we just said what we're actually worried about? What if we trusted each other enough to be honest? I know that's not protocol. I know it breaks all the rules. But maybe that's what we need." "That is absurd," an older Theshan counselor said. "Diplomacy requires careful consideration. Words have power. We cannot simply—" "He's right," Queen Valerian said. Everyone turned to look at her. "The commander is right," she repeated. "We have been negotiating for weeks and made no progress. Perhaps it is time to try something different." She looked at Ambassador Bennett. "What are your true concerns?" The ambassador hesitated, then spoke. We're worried about sharing technology with a society that might use it against us or against others. We've been burned before by other species. We need assurances. And we, the Queen said, are worried that your culture will overwhelm ours, that our young people will abandon our traditions in favor of your music, your films, your way of life. We are afraid of losing who we are. The room sat in shocked silence. These were things that had been thought but never said aloud. Okay, Jake said. Now we're getting somewhere. What if we set up exchange programs? Humans come here to learn your ways. Thesians go to Earth to learn ours. Real cultural exchange, not just trade. And for the technology, what if we start small? Share things that can't be weaponized. Build trust gradually. The counselors looked at each other. Ambassador Bennett was nodding slowly. That could work, one of the younger Thesian advisors said. It addresses both concerns. It is highly unusual, the older counselor said. But he didn't say no. The Queen stood. We will take a recess. I wish to speak with Commander Morrison, alone. Oh no, Jake thought. Here it comes. Once again he found himself in the Queen's private chambers. But this time she seemed agitated. She paced back and forth, her robes flowing behind her. You did it again, she said. Did what? Broke protocol. Spoke out of turn. Offered solutions that ignore centuries of diplomatic tradition. I'm sorry, I just thought, and it worked, she said, stopping to face him. Your absurd human directness actually moved the negotiations forward more than weeks of proper diplomacy. Do you know how frustrating that is? Jake tried not to smile. Pretty frustrating? Extremely frustrating, she said, but there was something in her voice that wasn't really angry. You make me question everything. The protocols I have followed my entire life. The traditions I was taught to preserve. You walk into my world and make it all seem ... unnecessary. That's not what I meant to do, I know. She walked to her window, looking out at the stars like she always did when she was thinking. But you are doing it anyway. You and your chaos. Your honesty. Your complete disregard for the way things should be done. Jake walked closer but kept some distance. Is that a bad thing? I don't know, she said quietly. Part of me says yes. That you are dangerous to everything my people have built. But another part... She paused. Another part wonders if maybe we need danger. If maybe we have been so safe, so ordered, that we have forgotten how to truly live. She turned to face him. The light from the stars made her shimmer. Do you know what I did yesterday? I listened to one of those Earth songs from my collection. A man singing about wanting to be free, about breaking chains. And I wept. I have not wept in 15 years. But I wept because I understood him. Jake's chest felt tight. Your Majesty, Valerian, she said. When we are alone, you may call me Valerian. I am tired of being your Majesty every moment of every day. Valerian, Jake said, testing the name. It felt strange and right at the same time. She walked closer to him. They were standing very near now. Jake could see the patterns on her skin shift and change. I told you something the other night, she said. About giving you my number if you were single. I have been thinking about that constantly. Wondering why I said it. What it means. And what does it mean? It means I am attracted to you, she said simply. To your chaos. Your honesty. Your ridiculous human emotions that you wear so openly. It means I have spent more time thinking about you than about trade agreements. It means I am failing in my duty as queen because I cannot stop wondering what it would be like to choose something for myself. To choose you. Jake's mouth went dry. I don't know what to say. Say that I am being foolish. Say that nothing can happen between us. Say that I am letting emotion cloud my judgment. She looked away. Say something that will help me go back to the way things were. I can't say that, Jake said. Because I've been thinking about you too. About your laugh. About how you look when you're listening to your people's problems like you really care. About how lonely you seem even though you're surrounded by people all the time. This is impossible, she said. I am a queen? You are human. There are protocols, expectations. My people would never. An alarm cut through the air. A loud, urgent sound that made them both jump. Red lights flashed along the walls. The door burst open. One of the Queen's guards rushed in. Your Majesty, we have a situation. There has been an incident in the East Wing. An explosion. What kind of explosion? The Queen demanded, instantly back in command mode. Unknown. But there are reports of a breached containment area. The council is convening now. Jake followed the Queen as she ran toward the council chamber. Whatever moment they had been having was gone, replaced by crisis. The council chamber was chaos when they arrived. Advisors were shouting. Guards were running. Screens on the walls showed footage of smoke and damage. Report, the Queen commanded. An advisor stepped forward. Someone set off an explosive device in the storage area where we keep samples of the technology being discussed in the trade negotiations. Several items were destroyed. Guards are injured. Who did this? We don't know yet, Your Majesty. But there are signs that it was carefully planned. Someone with inside knowledge? Ambassador Bennett arrived, looking shaken. Was anyone killed? No, thankfully. But this was clearly meant to disrupt the negotiations. Jake studied the footage on the screens. Something didn't feel right. Can you show me the explosion again? They replayed it. Jake watched carefully. There, that guard. He left his post 30 seconds before the explosion. And see that shadow? Someone was waiting. The Queen looked at him. You think this was an inside job? I think someone doesn't want the alliance to happen. Someone who knew exactly where to strike and when. One of the older counselors, the one who had objected to Jake's ideas earlier, spoke up. This is exactly what I warned about. Bringing humans here has brought nothing but chaos and danger. We didn't do this, Ambassador Bennett protested. Can you prove that? Another counselor challenged. The room erupted into arguments. Jake could see the alliance falling apart right in front of them. Queen Valerian raised her hand and silence fell. We will investigate. We will find who did this. But we will not make assumptions. The humans are our guests and our potential allies. They will be treated with respect. Your Majesty, the older counselor said, with all due respect, your judgment may be compromised. You have spent considerable time with the human commander. Some might say too much time. The counselor backed. After Counselor Draven's arrest, security swept the entire palace. They found evidence of a larger conspiracy. Several conservative counselors had been working together to sabotage the human alliance. They believed the Theshan Empire was better off isolated, safe from outside influence. Jake sat in on the security briefings. The more he heard, the more worried he became. The conspiracy went deeper than anyone had thought. There were coded messages, secret meetings, plans to do more than just destroy technology samples. They were planning to sabotage the human shuttle, the security chief reported. Make it look like an accident. Kill the human delegation and blame it on equipment failure. Ambassador Bennett went pale. Amy grabbed Jake's arm. They had been hours away from death without knowing it. Queen Valerian's face showed no emotion, but Jake could see her hands clenched into fists. Find all of them. Every single person involved. I want them arrested by nightfall. But finding them proved difficult. The conspirators had gone underground. They knew they had been discovered and were hiding somewhere in the massive station. We need to find them before they try something else, Jake said. They're desperate now. That makes them dangerous. Agreed, the Queen said. But how? We have searched everywhere. Jake thought for a moment. What if we didn't search? What if we listened instead? I don't understand. These people are believers. They think they're saving the Empire. And they're probably still communicating with each other, trying to figure out their next move. If we can intercept those communications, the security chief shook his head. We've been monitoring all official channels. Nothing. And then they're using unofficial ones, Jake said. Old systems. Forgotten technology. Things that aren't being watched anymore. Queen Valerian's eyes widened. The ancient relay system. We stopped using it decades ago, but it still exists. It was built into the original structure of the station. Can you access it? I can, she said, but it would require going to the old technical levels, areas that have been sealed for years. It would be dangerous. Then I'm coming with you, Jake said immediately. As am I, Amy added. The Queen looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. Very well, but we go quietly. A small team. If the conspirators know we're coming, they will scatter. They assembled a team of 4 guards and headed down. The palace had many levels, but the lowest ones were abandoned. The air got colder as they descended. The lights were dim or broken. Everything felt old and forgotten. This was the original station, the Queen explained as they walked through dusty corridors. Built by my ancestors 3,000 years ago. We expanded upward over time, but the foundation remains. Jake looked around. He could see the age in the walls. The metal was different from the newer sections. More solid. More real. They reached a door that was sealed with ancient locks. The Queen placed her hand on it, and the locks glowed. The door opened with a groan. Inside was a room full of equipment that looked like something from a museum. Old screens. Cables everywhere. The technology was primitive compared to what Jake had seen elsewhere in the palace. This is it, the Queen said. The original communication hub? They powered up the systems. It took time. Some of the equipment didn't work at first, but gradually screens flickered to life. The Queen's fingers moved across controls that she clearly remembered from her education. I studied these systems as a child, she said. Every heir learns the old ways. I never thought I would use them. Jake watched as she worked. There was something beautiful about seeing her in this environment. No crown, no formal robes. Just someone solving a problem with skill and knowledge. There, she said. I'm picking up encrypted communications. Several sources, all in the old language. Can you translate? Yes, they're planning something, tonight during the evening ceremonies. She looked at Jake, worried. They're planning to attack the hall while both humans and Thessians are gathered. They want to kill everyone and make it look like human weapons malfunctioned. We have to warn everyone, Amy said. No, Jake said. If we warn them, the conspirators will go into hiding again. We might never find them all. We need to catch them in the act. That's too dangerous, the Queen protested. It's the only way. We know where they'll be and when. We can set a trap. They argued about it, but Jake was right. They needed to end this completely, not just delay it. They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. The Queen informed only her most trusted guards. They would attend the ceremony as planned, but be ready to act when the conspirators revealed themselves. Jake was given Thessian ceremonial armor. It felt strange and heavy, but he wore it. He would be on stage with the Queen and the other dignitaries. A target, but also a defender. As evening approached, the Queen called Jake to her chambers one final time. If something happens tonight, she said, I want you to know that these past days have been the happiest of my life. Nothing's going to happen, Jake said, trying to sound confident. We've got this planned out. Plans fail, especially when emotions are involved. She stepped closer to him. I have been thinking about what comes after. If we survive tonight, if the Alliance succeeds, what happens between us? I don't know, Jake admitted. I've never dated a queen before, and I have never dated anyone. My relationships have all been arranged. I don't know how to do this. We figure it out as we go, Jake said. That's how humans do it. We make mistakes. We learn. We try again. That sounds terrifying. It is. But it's also kind of great. She was standing very close now. Jake could see his reflection in her black eyes. He wanted to kiss her, but wasn't sure if that was appropriate, or allowed, or even physically possible given their different biology. She seemed to be thinking the same thing. In my culture, she said softly, we touch foreheads. It is how we show affection. Like this? Jake asked, leaning forward until his forehead rested against hers. "Yes," she whispered. "Like this." They stood that way for a long moment. Jake could feel warmth radiating from her skin, could hear her breathing sync with his. "Whatever happens tonight," he said, "I'm glad I met you. Even if Charlie did ruin everything first." She laughed softly. "Your creature did not ruin everything. He began everything. I should give him extra treats." A knock at the door interrupted them. It was time. The ceremony hall was filled with people. Humans and Thessians mixed together, a preview of what the Alliance could become. Jake stood on stage with the Queen, Ambassador Bennett, and several Thessian counselors. Music played. Speeches were given. Jake kept his eyes moving, watching for anything unusual. Amy was in the audience, also watching. The guards were positioned throughout the hall, ready but trying to look casual. Then he saw it. A figure moving along the upper balcony. Moving with purpose. Carrying something. Jake caught Amy's eye and nodded toward the balcony. She saw it too. More figures appeared. They were surrounding the hall. This wasn't just an attack. It was an ambush. "Now," Jake said quietly to the Queen. She gave a signal. The lights went out. People gasped in surprise. In the darkness, the guards moved. Jake ran toward the stairs that led to the balcony. He heard Amy behind him. They reached the upper level just as the conspirators were setting up some kind of device. "Stop!" Jake yelled. They turned, surprised. One of them pressed a button. The device began to glow. Jake didn't think. He just ran forward and tackled the nearest conspirator. They crashed into the railing. The device fell from the conspirators' hands, tumbling toward the crowd below. Amy caught it. Just barely. She held it carefully, not sure if it would explode. The lights came back on. Guards swarmed the balcony, arresting the conspirators. More arrests were happening throughout the hall. The security team had identified all the conspirators from the old communication logs. They were rounding them up. Jake stood up, breathing hard. He had a cut on his forehead from hitting the railing. But he was alive. Then he heard the Queen scream his name. He turned and saw one more conspirator. One they had missed. The figure was on stage, holding a weapon pointed at Ambassador Bennett. "This ends now," the conspirator shouted. "No alliance. No humans corrupting our way of life." Jake started running, but he was too far away. The Queen was closer. She moved faster than Jake thought possible. She put herself between the weapon and the ambassador. The weapon fired. A burst of energy that should have killed, but the Queen had raised her hand. Some kind of shield technology built into her royal jewelry? The energy dissipated around her. Guards tackled the final conspirator. It was over. The hall erupted into chaos. People shouting. Guards everywhere. Medical teams rushing in. Jake reached the stage. The Queen was still standing, but she was shaking. He grabbed her shoulders. "Are you okay?" She nodded. I am fine." The shield held. "You could have been killed." "So could you. So could many others." She looked around at the hall. This is what fear does. It makes people do terrible things to protect what they love. The conspirators were led away. The crowd slowly calmed down. Ambassador Bennett gave a speech about unity in the face of hatred. It was good, diplomatic, exactly what the moment needed. But later, when the hall had emptied and only a few remained, the Queen's council gathered. They were not happy. "Your Majesty," one of the older counselors said, "we cannot ignore what has happened. A significant portion of our people fear this alliance." The weeks following the conspiracy were difficult. The Thessian Empire was divided. About half the population supported Queen Valerian's decisions. They saw her relationship with Jake as a symbol of progress and hope. The other half saw it as a betrayal of tradition. Protests happened daily outside the palace. Some were peaceful. Some were not. Jake spent most of his time trying to stay out of the way. He knew his presence made things harder for the Queen, but she insisted he stay close. They worked together on the alliance details. They ate meals together. They talked late into the night about everything, and nothing. Amy watched it all with an amused expression. "You two are like teenagers," she said one morning after finding them asleep in the Queen's study, surrounded by papers. "We were working," Jake mumbled. "Waking up, right, working. That's why she's holding your hand even in her sleep." Jake looked down. Sure enough, his hand was intertwined with Valerian's. Her patterns were shifting in her sleep, creating waves of color across her skin. "We're figuring things out," he said quietly. "I can see that." Amy sat down. "For what it's worth, I think you're good for her." She smiles now. She didn't before. She smiled. I saw her smile in old recordings. "Those weren't real smiles," Amy said. "Those were duty smiles. What she does now? That's real." The Queen woke up then. She looked around, confused for a moment, then saw Jake and Amy. She sat up quickly, trying to regain her composure. "Good morning, Your Majesty," Amy said with a grin. "Sleep well." "I did not intend to fall asleep," the Queen said, embarrassed. "We were reviewing trade proposals, and it's fine," Jake said. "We both needed the rest." Ambassador Bennett arrived a few minutes later with news. "The human government has approved the alliance treaty. All we need now is final approval from the Theshan Council. The vote is today," the Queen nodded. "I know. I will address them this afternoon." But before the afternoon came, something unexpected happened. A delegation arrived from the outer territories of the Theshan Empire. They were younger Theshans, led by a woman named Sira. They asked to speak with the Queen. "We represent the youth of the Empire," Sira said when they met. "We have watched what you have done, how you have stood up to the old council, how you have chosen happiness over duty. It has inspired us." "I am not sure I should be inspiring anyone," the Queen said. "I have caused quite a bit of trouble." "You have caused change," Sira corrected. "For too long our empire has been stuck. We follow the same old ways because that is what we have always done. But Your Majesty, you showed us that we can choose differently, that we can honor our past while building a new future." She pulled out a document. "We have collected signatures. Over 3 million young Theshans who support your relationship with Commander Morrison, who support the Alliance, who want to see our empire grow and change." The Queen took the document with shaking hands. Her eyes scanned the names. Page after page of support. "This is ... double quote she couldn't finish. "This is proof that you are not alone," Sira said. "When you stand before the council today, know that millions stand with you." After they left, the Queen sat in silence for a long time. Jake sat with her, not saying anything. "Just being there. I was prepared to fight alone," she finally said. "I thought my choice would cost me my people's love. But perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps they were just waiting for someone to show them it was possible to choose." "You did that," Jake said. "You chose. And they saw it." "We chose," she corrected. "This was not just me." That afternoon, the council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled. Screens showed millions more watching from across the empire. This vote would determine the future of the Theshan Human Alliance. Queen Valerian stood before the council. She wore her full formal robes. Her crown floated above her head. But her face was calm, determined. "Honored Council," she began. "You are here to vote on the alliance treaty with the humans. But before you vote, I want to speak about what this alliance truly means." She walked to the center of the room. "For 3,000 years, we have been the same. We have followed the same protocols, the same traditions. We have been safe. We have been stable. But we have also been alone, stagnant, afraid to change because change might mean loss. The humans are different from us. They are chaotic, emotional. They break rules and challenge authority. They ask why when we say because tradition, and yes, that is frightening. But it is also necessary." She looked directly at the council members. "I met Commander Jake Morrison when he accidentally violated our sacred protocols. My first instinct was to punish him, to teach him our ways. But something strange happened. He began to teach me instead. Not through lectures or formal instruction, but through example. He showed me that it is possible to care deeply about duty while also caring about personal happiness. He showed me that breaking some rules creates space for better rules. He showed me that love is not a weakness, but a strength. And most importantly, he showed me that I had a choice. The chamber was silent. Everyone listening. I chose him, she continued. I chose to pursue a relationship that breaks every protocol about royal partnerships. And many of you have been upset about that choice. You say I have betrayed our traditions, that I have put my personal desires above the Empire's needs. But I argue the opposite. I argue that by choosing happiness, by showing that even a queen can make choices about her own life, I have given our people permission to do the same. And the response has been overwhelming. She pulled out the document Syrah had given her. 3 million signatures. 3 million young Thessians who support change, who want to see our empire evolve, who are tired of sacrificing happiness for tradition. She placed the document on the central table. This alliance is not just about trade. It is about showing our people that growth is possible, that we can honor our past while building a different future, that we can be both stable and dynamic, both traditional and progressive. So I ask you to vote yes, not just for the alliance, but for the possibility of change, for the hope that our empire can be more than it has been, for the chance to show our people that they can choose their own paths. She stepped back. The vote is yours, but know that whatever you decide, I will continue to choose happiness. I will continue to choose Commander Morrison. I will continue to show our people that choice is not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. The council members looked at each other. Then the voting began. It was close. So close that Jake's heart was pounding. He watched the numbers climb on the screens. Yes votes. No votes? It was almost even. Then the final vote came in. A yes vote from one of the oldest council members. One who had been opposed from the beginning. The alliance passed. By a single vote, the chamber erupted. Some cheering. Some angry. But it was done. Ambassador Bennett grabbed Jake in a hug. We did it. We actually did it. Amy was grinning. I told you it would work out. But Jake was watching the Queen. She stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by noise and chaos, and she was smiling. Not her duty smile. Her real smile. She found Jake's eyes across the room. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. He understood. That evening there was a ceremony. The official signing of the Alliance Treaty. Representatives from both species gathered in the Great Hall. The same hall where Jake had first seen the Queen. The same hall where Charlie had caused chaos, speaking of which Amy had brought Charlie. The ferret sat on her shoulder, behaving himself for once. The Queen signed the document with formal grace. Ambassador Bennett signed for humanity. It was done, official. Humanity and the Thessian Empire were allies. Then came the unexpected part. The Queen stood and addressed the crowd. As my first act under this new alliance, I am announcing a new protocol. From this day forward, any Thessian is free to pursue relationships with whomever they choose, regardless of clan, status, or species. Love is no longer a political tool. It is a personal choice. The crowd gasped. This was huge. This changed everything about Thessian society. Furthermore, she continued, I am establishing the position of Cultural Exchange Ambassador. This person will help bridge our two cultures, will help us understand each other, will work to ensure that this alliance benefits everyone. She turned to Jake. Commander Jake Morrison, I formally offer you this position. If you accept. Jake hadn't expected this. He looked at Amy, who was grinning like crazy. He looked at Ambassador Bennett, who nodded encouragingly. I accept, Jake said. On one condition. The Queen raised an eyebrow. You are bargaining with your Queen? I'm bargaining with my girlfriend, Jake said. It was the first time he had used that word. It felt strange and perfect. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. The Queen tried to maintain her serious expression but failed. She smiled. What is your condition? That Charlie gets to stay too. He's part of the deal. Your creature has caused nothing but trouble. He also made you laugh. That is true. She pretended to think about it. Very well. Charlie may stay, but he must learn proper protocol. Good luck with that, Jake said. The ceremony continued with more speeches and formal declarations. But Jake barely heard them. He was too busy thinking about what came next. He would be staying on the station. He would be working with the Queen. He would be navigating a relationship that nobody had figured out yet. It was terrifying. It was exciting. It was completely insane. It was perfect. Law.